Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Strife's Sanctum podcast. My name is Citizen Strife, and this week I get to talk about a show that kind of tries to mix a detective thriller, conceptual procedural crime drama thing with yokai, kemono, other interesting horror things in Japan, that sort of stuff. So yokai in this case. The show is in Spectre. And the first season of it debuted a few years ago, and it took a long time to kind of get a second one out, but it was like either early last year or kind of late a couple of years ago at this point. But it does kind of feel like two different shows now that I think about it. And I do definitely want to discuss it. It's actually good timing because I'm going to Anime Detour and actually met the voice actress for the main character in the dub version. So I have a lot of good things to say about Inspector. I have some iffy things to say about Inspector, but overall I'm going to be very positive about it. If you have seen it show, you probably know what stuff I'm going to mention as negatives. But this is going to be one where I kind of have to talk in a different order than usual because of the fact that I met the actress, and it does add to kind of the fun of it because this show does hinge on Kotoko Iwanaga, voiced in the dub version at least by Lizzie Freeman. And Lizzie had a panel yesterday, and she's energetic as all heck. It was great. For being somebody who purported herself as being not great in front of crowds, she nailed everything, and it was fun to hear her talk about it. I know specifically because there were other characters that she does voice, but I knew her from this show specifically, and when I asked her about this, she beamed so much, and her story was interesting because it talks about kind of the main story arc that the show deals with, which is kind of a divisive thing, but in a funny way. So it's a good story about it. But suffice it to say, the story is Kotoko Iwanaga is this 18, 19-year-old girl who becomes the goddess of wisdom. So she loses an eye and a leg in the bargain, in the agreement, but can now converse with yokai as a mediator between humans and yokai, because a lot of things can't be explained. This isn't necessarily a horror show. This isn't necessarily a crime thriller. I would say the pacing of it is kind of on the Ghost in the Shell side, specifically standalone complex, and not even in the action sense. Like, if you ever watched the old Ghost in the Shell show and felt like, man, they like to talk. They like to talk about the world building and the ramifications of things, and they do that here in a different way about how yokai work or how things work. Kotoko's thing is that she can converse with yokai, and she investigates murders as a private investigator. She works with police, but she doesn't really. But the thing that works in her favor, which makes it an interesting show, is that while she's conversing with people, she not only details what she thinks happens, but she also tells rumors about said things. And she will definitely say, I just gave the best explanation I could. Whether that's a lie, whether that's not, whether it's real, whether it's fake, is the crux of the show. And sometimes you are not really sure if what you're being shown happens, because the show operates in a different way than most detective shows and things. And I want to bring in Amiku MD, Doctor Detective here as a counterpoint, because I'm watching that this season. Amiku is the traditional doctor's thing in the Sherlock Holmes sense. So they're solving the thing, and they're doing the thing, and they're talking about the thing, and they're going to do it, and then they solve it as things happen. So Amiku is effectively trying to find the answers. Inspector kind of operates in reverse, where the things have already happened, but it's kind of like you're being told and shown things that have already happened, but not necessarily in flashback form, but the story that Kotoko gives you to explain what could or could not have happened. And this is how I'm going to tell the police and they will investigate the thing, or this is going to be what solves the yokai because they're above and beyond, they're out of the human realm and they don't care and they just want the thing solved. So most cases are solved, 2-3 episodes and whatever, and they solve them and they do it whatever. But there are instances where she cannot do it herself because she's not really a fighter. She is a talker. She is a mediator. She doesn't govern everything, but I think the yokai respect her as that. And I do think Lizzie brings that across as this really intense girl, but goofy girl at the same time. She has to balance everything really hard, kind of mousy at times, kind of goofy, very horny at times, which is weird for a show like this, but I think it plays very well. And she happens upon a character, the secondary main character, Kuro Sakuragawa, voiced by Brandon Winkler. The only other show or game I remember him from was Master Detective's Archive Raincode. And he was the dude in the mask, and, he ended up being the main villain of the whole thing. And I remember that voice. I'm like, I know who that guy is. Oh, it's that guy. And Kuro's interesting because he's kind of half yokai, half human in his own right. And he's the protagonist guy of sorts. Kotoko is the main driving force of the show. But specifically in the first season, Kuro's thing is that he is part of a bloodline that ate the flesh of a mermaid to gain immortality, which... weird, but okay. I'm guessing it's a Japanese thing. Let's go with it. And then a Kudan, which, how would I describe it? Prophetic powers to choose different futures, and they coexist. So if he can't solve a situation, or Kotoko can't solve a situation, he can, he's not even a fighter per se. He's just a guy who can kind of live forever, or has Wolverine powers, essentially. Superhuman powers to live on and whatnot. I'm doing my best to describe it because it is very, very different. But the best way I would describe his power set, and this is going to sound very strange, but this is the best way I can describe it, is the Wolverine healing factor added with that scene in Endgame where Doctor Strange is like, I've calculated all of these possible futures and I've failed. Right? Because they visualize all different possible futures in that Back to the Future. This is a strand going this direction, this is a strand going this direction, this goes here, and every possible thing, he's grasping at it, thinking, is this the successful one that's going to get me to where I want to go, to get rid of the thing that I need? And that's specifically helpful for the big thing in the show. Again, I keep delaying it, and I'm delaying it for a reason, because it has to be talked about. But Kuro's entire thing is he, happens upon Kotoko and saves her from something, and then she comes back later and says, I want to be your girlfriend. Let me be your girlfriend. I can explain why your other relationship with the other girl didn't work. Be my girlfriend. And she forces it because she knows his power set and, knows why stuff happens. So his former fiance, Saki Yumihara, voiced by Lauren Landa, who was Rainy in Radiant Historia, among many other things. That's what I mostly know her from. Saki was a police officer, and they were dating for a while, but Kuro scared off a Kappa because a Kappa's, a yokai thing, and she finds out he's just kind of weird and doesn't like it and all. So Kuro ends up going with Kotoko, and one of the best parts of the show, and one of the few things people might have seen if you've never seen it, is the clip of Kotoko and Saki meeting for the first time. She looks at the badge, and her exact words are, I'm Kotoko Iwanaga, Kuro's current girlfriend. And Saki just punches her in the face, and Kotoko has that weird just that sound effect of her getting punched. if anything, I'm betting that's what people might know if you've never seen it, but it is something memorable because a lot of the first season is just Kotoko and Saki putzing at each other about, no, he's my girl, he's my boyfriend, and just this weird love triangle thing of like, well, I do still like him, but I don't, and I'm weird, and I can't like you, and whatever, But the other main character, and I do like that this character doesn't focus on too many characters all at once. There's only one other important one. It's hard to broach this one. I've done my best to read up on it to remember what's going on, but Rika Sakuragawa, voiced by Christina V. Very sickly, very... I wouldn't even call it depressed. I would just say just mopey and downtrodden. Not quite depressed and not quite just morose, but she looks it, she acts it, and yet it's weird. I don't know how I would even describe it. But she's a sickly person that's in a hospital bed, but she can't die. That's essentially what it is. So she has this love-hate relationship with all of them. Well, except Saki, because they don't really interact much. But Kotoko, she likes and stays at her home and whatnot, which is weird. They have a cordial enough relationship that they stay at each other's houses and shit. But she does like Kuro in that weird pseudo-incestual way, but it's never made clear if that's what she's after. But then I read up on it again before recording this just to make sure what her goal was, and it's to get rid of the Kudon and the mermaid. The Kudon and the mermaid thing to become human again. Why she'd want to do that, I don't know. Maybe it's some weird, again, relationship thing where if Kuro dies because he's not immortal anymore, but she is, it's some painful... I mean, that's... the closest thing I could think of it. I don't know. Like, they don't... They talk about it, and then they don't. They don't know whether they want, like, an angsty relationship of this. Like, do they want Rika to kill Kotoko? Well, I mean, you could find easier ways to do it. You could just pick up a goddamn knife while you're sitting at home and do it. They go it in a weird way, and I keep saying weird because this show goes about things so awkwardly, from explaining detective things after they've happened and giving you an explanation that could or could not be real, to relationships of that nature, and then Rika being the cause of the crux of the first season, which is probably the big thing anybody knows about this, the Steel Lady Nanase thing. And I thought it was like 6 episodes, and it was like 8 or 10 of the entire show. If you're coming in from the first 2 or 3 episodes expecting 2 or 3 episodes of cool, like Mushishi, does things in an episode. Or Kemono Jihen does things in like 2. And they, focus on a character, they focus on a yokai or a kemono, and they get it done. No. You get like 2 episodes of that, and then the other 10 are Steel Lady Nanase. And if you like it, good. But weird. And again, all props to the actors. They do very well. I've said I really like Christina V a lot. I've seen everybody else and everything, every other good thing. And getting back to Lizzie, she had this to say about the Steel Lady Nanase stuff. She said it was monologue the show, and those Nanase episodes, she was recording them during COVID, and it was just it took like twice as long to do those episodes, and she was worried like her fans were going on full blast in the freaking apartment, and it's like, no, it's gonna sound like shit, because that's what COVID did to people when you can't record in booths anymore. But she brings her all to the role, and Kotoko is still kind of the driving force of the show. And I've said this about, say, Frieren or Apothecary Diaries, or more recently Zenshu. if you don't like Kotoko, you're not going to like the show. And even if you do, there are things about it that are like, do you like the yokai stuff? Well, do you like the yokai story? The Steel Lady Nanase stuff hinges on something that kind of reminded me of the Endless Eight. Not in exactly the same way, but how would I describe it? Instead of, okay, this super powerful being known as Steel Lady Nanase, how do we kill her? How do we grasp other futures? How do we find a future? All that's good. Rather than like, okay, here's a bunch of fights and they do different fights, and it's whatever. A lot of the show later on, from like episode 5 or 6 to like episode 11, is about messing with a website and giving people stories so what they think they know about Steel Lady Nanase is real or fake. And then for Kuro to, once that fiction is taken away, Steel Lady Nanase can actually be murdered because she's this unkillable thing that Rika has created to do the whatever. It's very strange. And I tried to make sense of it when I was watching it, because I watched it like 2 or 3 times, and in the run-up to this review. And I still don't really know what you're going for. And I see why Lizzie was saying this is a monologue of the show. You're mostly sitting there listening to Kotoko explain, here's this thing that could have been what happened to the Nanase girl, this idol that either committed suicide or was murdered or ended up murdering a police officer later on because of this case. And how do we get Kuro and Rika to fight each other and whatever, because Nanase is Rika's avatar of sorts. She wants to get people out of the way and she wants to murder people and she wants to get rid of Kotoko to be with Kuro. That's my explanation of things now that I've read it. But they spend a lot of episodes going back and forth talking about this is what could have been happening, and this is how we tell the internet to believe us. And then, the internet believes us, and the internet does this, and the internet does that. It's like one of those hacker things where you see hackers and whatever, and hacking in shows isn't like the most exciting thing because it's a person staring at a computer. The same thing feels here. You're doing a crime procedural at a very slow, methodical pace, and then you're talking about things that you're not really showing until you get to Nanase and Kuro fighting. And you're still supposed to care about Kuro, Saki, Rika, and Kotoko, and I do, but it wears thin. And I think a lot of people have agreed that this is the weakest part of the show. And then the second season basically just says, nope, we're not doing that kind of shit no more. I think people said that the manga does the same, and if you've read the manga, you can, correct me on that. I do not read manga versions before I watch anime adaptations, so bear that in mind when I'm trying to explain something that is very obtuse. Because the show can only do so much, and reading it can only do so much. I do not really have a fondness for the Steel Lady Nanase thing, so I moved on. What I got instead was the best part of the show. So if you get past the Steel Lady Nanase thing, or if you ignore it, you go into season 2, and the majority of the early few episodes is about Yuki Onna. And Yuki Onna is great. The Yuki Onna arc is why I like the show, because I have a fondness for the Yuki Onna mythos. I have a fondness for any interpretation, whether it's very negative, very positive. Anytime I see a Yuki Onna, like I played a Frostlass in a D&D style Pokemon campaign thing we did a couple years ago for my group. Like I am a sucker for that mythos. And they use it very effectively in a comedic and a dramatic sense in Spectre. Yuki Onna finds this person who got pushed off a cliff by their friend and, finds him and keeps him alive and whatnot. And she comes down off the mountain later and he recognizes her, and then he tells this story that okay, life has kind of gone by, and I was with a relationship with somebody else, but my life has kind of hit the dumps, but I'm kind of in, not house arrest, but permanent retirement sort of thing, like house retirement sort of whatever. He was laid off from his job, but he doesn't really mind it because he has the money to survive on it. He finds the Yuki-onna and they end up being together and quickly, start having weekly or semi-weekly meetups, and they grow to like each other. And Yuki-onna is she's just a bubbly character and likes human things and eating junk food and has a moodiness and haughtiness to her, but it's played goofily and cheerfully, and it's great. And then she gets accused for murder, or his friend or the dude gets accused for murder, or both. And Kotoko and Kuro have to facilitate and mediate that situation, and it turns out that one of the few people that actually took up for the dude before he got laid off is actually involved, because it ends up being kind of a stalkerish thing, and it becomes weird. But again, it's played a lot quicker. It's played a lot nicer. It's a 3 to 4 episode thing rather than a 6 or 10 episode thing like the Nanase arc. And then they go to a different story with a set of different characters about this wooden puppet who apparently has like electric powers in this beachfront town, this port town thing, and this old lady who is like well known not as like a mayor or anything, but as this kind of folkish hero person that everybody knows because she's just a old coot who loves to exercise and shit. She gets drawn into this whole mess of dealing with this guy who's like, I have cursed this land and you to do whatever, and Kotoko and Kuro have to work around it. Then the last arc is about this guy who is murdered or is suspected of murdering part of their organization. They own a resort or an inn or a set of inns, like a hospitality business kind of thing. And he is going to bequeath a set of like crazy inheritance to one of his 3 relatives, and they meet up and they have to come up with an explanation. He basically says, Kotoko is going to give you a chance to explain how a murder took place. If you can give me an explanation that works to my satisfaction, you'll get the inheritance. So while I found that to be kind of the lesser story, it's still interesting because you're seeing this mediation process and everybody kind of thinking through things. But what I like about the second season is that you're focusing on smaller scale stories. So if I don't like one, I don't have to like go 6 or 7 episodes to wait for the next one. The Yuki-onna thing I loved so much that it pretty much carried me through the rest of the season, which is great. And I think that's what the majority opinion is that they wanted the second season to be a lot more of what you would expect a show like this. You hear the elevator pitch and it says, okay, yokai stories, detective things, mini stories with this girl as the forefront. It's fine. It's great. The second season is way better than the first, without even questioning it. What I will say about the second season, which I think is a disservice, is all the focus that Rika and Kuro get is gone. Like, I know that this is Kotoko's show, and she's still the driving force, and I'm not complaining about that. What I'm saying is the balance is way off, because Kuro is reduced to being her valet or her chaperone, and then they'll throw in some things as like, do you want to make out on the couch, or do you want to go do a thing? We need money. Let's go do the thing. And Kuro doesn't really have any agency. Like, you barely even know that he's this dude who's like from the original season dealing with this power that he has, this set of powers that he has, or that Rika is this, on the run vigilante-ish person. She gets some focus and then it just kind of drops. Saki isn't even there anymore. So, you get that first season and then you get the second one, and it's basically, you get like 60% Kotoko, 30%, 35%, I don't know, 50% Kotoko, 30% Kuro, and then the other bits are Saki and whatever. This is like 90% Kotoko, and then everybody else gets the other 10%. And it's like, okay. I mean, I guess it's better. I mean, you still gave me a better, sub-story with the Yuki-Onna arc, and that is the thing. If you've never seen it, I would say watch those 3 episodes of the second season and then see, do I want to watch the rest of it? Because if that stuff doesn't hook you, then I don't know if the Steel Lady Nanase stuff is going to. And I might be, again, either preaching to the choir or saying, do I still like Inspector? Would I recommend Inspector? Yes, if you're in the mindset for that kind of thing. I don't hate it. I do like it. There are great things about it, but you do have to be aware of what the show you're kind of getting into. It is not a pulse-pounding action crime thriller. It is a talky show. I like that because I like when characters talk a lot, but not a lot of stuff happens. At least until the second season when things go a little bit faster. So bear that in mind if you're coming off a show that is very talky and very like a political intrigue thing or a historical drama. Do not go into this. If you're going to this as a balancing point for something a little more action-oriented, it would give you a change of pace. And I think that the characters are strong enough to give you what you're looking for. The aura of the yokai stuff is there, and that is kind of a driving thing. It's Kotoko and the yokai stuff. That is what really drives the show, and I think that's what's going to work in its favor. So yes, bear that in mind if you watch it. But that'll do for this episode. And let's see, do the anime discussions. Final Fantasy IX is the next episode. I wonder if I could get away with doing one without even doing a primer. I could just say, Final Fantasy IX, I know everything about it. But I'm probably still going to do my usual setup for it. Mega Man 3, Mega Man X4, Castlevania Seasons 1 through 4. And then, by and large, the spring shows should start filtering in, so that I'm going to start weaving in, the tail end of the winter anime to the spring stuff, and I'm gonna go through that rigmarole early season of like, okay, how much stuff do I like versus how much stuff do I not like? Well, let's find out. But that'll do for today's episode. I'll see you next time. Citizen Strife, signing off.